Hello and welcome to a very joyful mini episode where we're going to talk about the mess that is the Indianapolis Colts quarterback room. Me, being an Indianapolis Colts fan, be prepared because this may contain a rant. The Indianapolis Colts are completely and utterly failing Anthony Richardson, and we saw this. And we saw the fruit of it yesterday in the game against the Minnesota Vikings, in which the Colts defense played extremely well. And the new head quarterback, Joe Flacco, laid a complete and utter egg. And there are multiple facets to this. The Colts started the game extremely strongly. Run, like pounding the rock, taking the game to the opponent, and then unfortunately for the Colts, Jonathan Taylor decides to yeet the ball back to the Minnesota defense and takes away any momentum that the Colts had. But that's beside the point. Joe Flacco's performance in this game left a lot to be desired. The level of performance was no different to that having Anthony Richardson at the helm. So all they have done in this process is prevented Anthony Richardson from getting more game time. Now, for Richardson, he is a young quarterback who has not a lot of college experience. They viewed him as a raw prospect. They said he's going to have ups and downs. When they drafted him, they talked about this. Now, it does seem like the Colts, well, particularly Ballard and Steichen, are petrified for their jobs. And what happens when you are petrified for your job? You make self-serving decisions.
Yep.
Now, they say that the Colts are in win-now mode. Realistically, the Colts are not in win-now mode. Because when you draft a quarterback that high up, you are in a rebuild mode. Yes, the defensive side of the ball was pretty ready. But the offensive side of the ball still had gaps to fill. The tight end situation is not great. And then if you look at the defensive side of the ball, the cornerback situation is completely and utterly awful. You can rush the ball all you want, but if the secondary is not really working, you're still going to get found out. Now, in this game yesterday, Joe Flacco had opportunities to win this game. When it was a one-score game, 3rd down and 2, I think it was 3rd down and 2, he decides to throw into double, triple coverage, and he had the check down wide open. He had the check down wide open, go to 4th down, and normally if it's 4th and 2 and you have Richardson, you've got a read option available. You've got none of that with Flacco. You've got a very predictable offense. And what we have seen with the numbers is Flacco, if he is getting pressured, his completion percentage is like 40%. Of late. When he doesn't have pressure, his completion percentage is high. But once he gets pressurized, he's a lame duck, unfortunately. Now, does that breed the kind of level of performance that you'd expect to try and make it towards the latter ends of the playoffs? When you're going to be facing a Steve Spagnuolo-led defense, most likely in the Chiefs. If the Colts were ever to even get close to that, not a chance. So, Peter, your thoughts on this? Because I've had a rant, and I've spoken 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes about this. So I want you boys to chime in because I think they made a completely bad decision, and if I look at, then once I get your opinions on this, we're going to look at the games ahead and see realistically what is going to happen for the Colts.
Okay, so before they drafted Anthony Richardson, the Colts have been through a series of stopgap QBs, correct?
Correct.
Quite
And
You
then-
had so if you
QBs.
look at after the retirement of Andrew Luck, Philip Rivers. The only one that's worked, right? The only one that worked, and he decided to retire. Then you had Carson Wentz,
Yep.
Jacoby Brissett situation.
Yep.
It's just, and then now picking Richardson. Now,
So in that
can Ballard
aspect-
survive this?
Yes, I mean because here's the thing, is because he had built a lot of trust like towards before Andrew Luck retired, and with the Philip Rivers acquisition proving to be successful, so he has built up what you might classify as GM equity to be able to hold on his job for a while. But for me, I just feel like it is a mistake them drop Anthony Richardson. But then I'm gonna offer a little bit of a grace here. Because I'm just thinking, are they benching him to build him up behind closed doors until he's ready to go again? Because to be perfectly honest, I think like the guy that I don't like anymore said, and it's quite true, is that we are not allowing quarterbacks to develop because of successes of other quarterbacks.
Correct. So
But I
the thing,
think the Colts have completely messed. They've messed it up. But I think them benching Richardson is a way to try and get
okay,
us
so
behind the scenes.
okay, let's bring it back to even like game plans, right?
Mm.
So if we look at it from an X's and O's perspective, the game plan for when having Flacco there, in terms of passing the ball, we're not talking about him running the ball, right? Richardson running the ball. In terms of the passing game, it's completely different.
Oh yes, I agree.
They don't run the ball as much when they have Richardson. They rely on like deep passing. They don't allow him to get that progression to try and pass the ball. Like, get those easy throws to get him settled into a game. None of that. The game plan, like, when he looked good last year, Richardson, in his rookie season before the injuries happened, none of that game plan is happening. It's a complete chalk and cheese. They're relying on splash plays completely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not sustainable to even try and win games that way.
Yeah, I'm gonna chime in here. I've got like 4 things I sort of want to bring up. This is based on what I've seen.
4?
Yeah, just 4 things, but it's moving from like point to point, so I'll kind of roll with it. One thing that I want to sort of add to like Pete's argument here is with regards to like the amount of football Anthony Richardson has played prior to coming to the league. It's not a lot. It's not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I agree.
in college, being 1 year as a full-time starter, granted it was the SEC and he showed flashes, you need more reps. And we've seen other QBs in the past. We saw the 49ers take a guy. He didn't quite pan out. North Dakota didn't play a lot of college football as the starter. You need those reps. Brock Purdy was a 5-year starter. I believe it was Illinois or Iowa. I'm not quite sure. One of the two.
Iowa.
So that's a lot of football he's played. So there's certain things that he understands, certain concepts, certain things that he's not going to have to get coached on, that he's already built up through those reps. Anthony Richardson is raw, and you need that time. Patrick Mahomes, before he came to the league, he's played a lot of football, but
he wasn't raw. He just
raw.
they had a stable quarterback situation ahead of him because they had Alex Smith.
Yeah. So my thing here is that he needs more reps, and to get those reps, he has to play. It's just unfortunate he's putting it together in the NFL, and that sort of brings me on to like my next point here: decision making. So a lot of people are saying it was the whole "I'm tired, take me out of the game." I really don't think it's that. Players get winded all the time. They can tell the coach, "Hey, listen, I got winded. I just need like a snap to sort of get my breath back, get my bearings." I don't think it's that. I've been seeing like chronic bad decision making from Anthony Richardson. Like he has his moments where he's not making good choices. Like I remember, I think it was the previous game, that scamper
against the Texans.
We're talking like the last few minutes of the game.
Running out of bounds.
Doing? What are you doing? You know the down and distance. You understand the game clock. Like as soon as you get the ball, we know he's fast. He's got speed. You should have just he should have known he has to run out of bounds.
I don't think he actually had a route to out of bounds. That was the thing. There was a defender on the perimeter as well, so he had to run through him.
He should have known he needs to make a beeline to try and get out of bounds. But you see him turning upfield, trying to break tackles. I'm like, what are you doing? You know, you have you've been in the league now. This is his second season.
But the thing is, he only lasted 6 games last year. That was the thing.
6 games. It's his second season.
Or something like that.
You have to start processing the game faster. Like a lot of the development of an NFL QB isn't really the physical. They draft you based on the physical. We know he's got the tools.
Actually, it was only 4 games last year he played. So when he's 10 games in.
Yeah, essentially it's everything in between your ears. Like you've got to be able to be a study of the game. And I think they kind of feel that he's not making the right decisions right now to be given the keys to the franchise. He is their QB of the future. And after watching this game, you know it was a bad decision.
So it's not. So I'm going to interject on that, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at his completion percentage this year is like 44%. It's historically bad. But what I have seen in a lot of that play is no separation, him having to throw balls into bad situations. Mm-hmm. Because you've got to try, if you believe your guy, sometimes your guy may not be fully open, but you've got to kind of you've still got to throw it, right? Because you believe in your guy.
Yep.
Drops have been insane this season. These receivers are dropping the ball as if they've got butter laced on their fingers. And play calling. Steichen is laying an absolute stinker when it comes to play calling.
Yeah.
You look at his stats for those 4 games last year. 84 attempts, 50 completions, 60%. Right? 3 touchdowns, 577 yards, right? His yards per catch was 11.5 last year. Yards per completion, right? 11.5. This year is 16.2, which is leading the league. But that's not a good thing. Because you're relying on such chunk yardage to even get down the field. Whereas last year, it seemed a little bit more methodical. There seemed to be a game plan. This year, there doesn't seem to be. So when they talk about accountability, because I've been hearing so much noise from the Colts about accountability. Well, the coaches need to be accountable and actually solve their problems. If Steichen's play calling's not up to scratch, he needs to give it up and give it to somebody who can actually do something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he's going to be gone. A lot of people think that both of them could be gone. Steichen and Ballard could be gone at the end of the season. They could do what the Commanders did. Clean house. And now players are wanting to go to the Commanders, right? Because they've got a competent coaching situation.
Yep.
And a good quarterback.
Just like that. I mean, the Commanders, this is another thing. Like, it's adding pressure. We're seeing QBs come into the league and first season, they're struggling the first few games, then it just clicks and they figure it out. And here's the thing. You've got an owner in Jim Irsay who's there like, and we brought in Anthony Richardson. Over there, I'm looking at Jaden Daniels. Kind of similar in terms of how they started out. Maybe not performing that great, but showing promise. But then Jaden Daniels is now currently, 7-2 right now? It suddenly clicked. And he's saying, so we have someone who's just as physically talented.
They don't have a good secondary either.
Yeah, they don't have a good secondary. If you look at the roster, everyone was saying Washington's team isn't that good. Down, right?
On the offensive side, I think they're actually good.
Offensive side, they've got their number one guy.
They've got McLaurin. They've got 2 very good running backs, right? They've got
very good running backs.
Brian Robinson Jr. They've got Austin Eckler.
Yeah.
So
and
you look at
Irsay's looking. Ursay's
Yeah.
looking at his team and he's there like, okay, so we've got probably a better running back situation. We've got receivers that can play. We can probably bring in a new one through the draft in the years to come. But what's going on with with our QB situation? Like, why are we not? I'm not saying we have to be Jaden Daniels level of production, but why can't we even get half of that? And Jimmer says, I think he's stayed out of the limelight for now, but I think he's getting frustrated because he's seen us go around. And I think it's more Vic Ballard. Like at some point, you've got to ask yourself, like, okay, Ballard, you've been the GM
Chris
here.
Ballard. So Chris Ballard is on
Chris
the hot
Ballard.
seat, right?
Yeah, he is on
Now,
the hot seat.
all right, so you look at the next 4 games up until the bye. This weekend coming, Buffalo Bills. That's a loss. Even at home, that's a loss.
Yep.
Then travel to the New York Jets. And their two wide receivers clicked finally last week.
Yep.
Then they've got the small task of hosting the Detroit Lions. And then having the softer matchup of traveling to New England, where Drake May is actually showing a couple of things, showing some glimmers, right, of hope. Even though there's not a lot of hope in New England at the moment. If they lose all 4 games, that's 4 and 9. Steichen's gone. Ballard, and Ballard will follow at the end of the season. I don't see any other way.
Yeah, I think if things don't pick up, Ballard I think is gone for sure. Steichen might get.
But no, if you get a new GM in, they bring in their own coach. That's what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably what's going to happen. And then, I think the pressure to win now is really adding up because you can only be in like rebuild mode for so long. Like you can't do this for half a decade. At some point,
it has been 6 years.
Around.
6 years since Andrew Luck, unfortunately, decided to
walk away.
And the quarterback situation has not been solved in half a decade.
Yep.
I think 2018 season was his last one, so 5 years. And it's a complete basket case when it comes to the Colts.
Yeah, I think your head coach needs to simplify that offense if they need to. Just find ways in which you can.
Yeah, it's 5 years since he left.
Make his reads easier. But if something doesn't change, like I said, Ballard I think knows he's out. And my last point on this, which I was going to add on, is once you've kind of opened Pandora's box, you can't put things back in now. This benching was, I mean, it did feel off, but what are you going to do now? You're going to go back to Anthony Richardson?
It's going to be the flip-flopping, and it's a Carolina Panthers situation. It's a Carolina Panthers situation. So
how do you think he feels? He's like, so this organization hasn't got enough faith in me as a starter. So Anthony Richardson is like, okay, if Ballard needs to go, let him go. He doesn't want me here, or he doesn't feel I'm good enough to start. So, and they'll always take the first overall pick, which they drafted at QB. They're always he's the future of the team. They're not going to draft anyone else.
If you look at the quarterback classes coming out, it's not going. It doesn't.
Yeah. So it's literally just one of those things where they've kind of put themselves in a bad situation. If they just wrote it out and started him at QB, Joe Flacco is not the savior. And I think this was the game that reminded everyone that, hey, listen, there's a reason why he's kind of like a call-up QB right now. He'll have his moments, he'll have his flashes, but you can't depend on him to kind of keep your season afloat.
Now,
unless he's playing for the Browns, of course.
The last thing I'll say is the way that the team heard about this secondhand through the media is abysmal. The fact that the only player on that roster that found out about it was Ryan Kelly. Funny enough, he's the center, so he's going to be the one that's going to be snapping the ball, but his level of performance has not been to the level of pay that he's getting, right?
Mm.
Him and Braden Smith have not been lighting the world on fire when it comes to their play, and they are getting paid out. This is, I think, still the most expensive offensive line in the game, with those two and Big Q, and it's utterly frustrating for the Colts fans, and to be honest, I don't see any light this season. Something's going to have to change. That's all that's all we should really say on it, because at the moment, Colts are just going to be one of those middling teams who are not going to go anywhere.